Hey, welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a Coffee with Kev episode where you and I have a quick chat, just like we were sitting together in a coffee shop. And my goal is to help you solve one specific problem and find new inspiration for taking your copywriting and your business to the next level. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. Hey, how are you? It's Kev. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And some cool updates today about basically the last month of my life. Some really big adventures and great lessons about entrepreneurialism, freelancing, copywriting. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to share an audio from one of the things I got to do here in the last month, which was hold a one-day mastermind meeting in London with about 10 of our members here in Copy Chief and members of my coaching program, The Freelancer's Journey. And it was really cool. I not only presented some stuff about how to write copy faster, I've been calling it the 60-minute sales letter. It's an updated version of my 4x6 copywriting formula that just continues to be universally embraced and used. It's just really, really simple and effective, isn't it? It's always the simplest stuff that has longevity, right? And so that's what this is. And I'm going to share this really cool sort of roundtable we had about proof, which is one of the 10 elements of any sales pitch. You got to have some proof, some demonstration in there, and different ways to use proof dynamically. You can, proof is one of the most flexible elements of copy because you can lead with it. You could feature it throughout your sales material. You could send it as a follow-up to your sales material. It's really incredibly powerful and flexible, the most flexible probably of all 10 components. So look forward to that at the end of this episode. That's about an 8-minute audio that I think you're really going to dig. And otherwise, I just want to share some inspirations I've had as I traveled. So this started out, well, first here in St. Pete, we had our 2-day meeting with our coaching students, and people came from all over the U.S. And also Parik, who lives in Dublin, came all the way from Ireland, and he was also in London with us. And so just to isolate that for a second, here's a young copywriter who's willing to get on a plane and travel around the world to sit in a room with people that he wants to learn from and people who are doing what he wants to do. Any doubt that guy's going to achieve his goal, right? With that kind of tenacity, that kind of willingness to put himself in the right rooms and make the right connections. Pretty amazing. It's great that travel is back as I record this here on April 420, bro. April 20, 2022, just 2 days ago, all the mask mandates here in the U.S. have been lifted for airports, for airlines. Man, what a relief. I don't know where you stand on this or if this is still some kind of political issue for people or not, but I would imagine we are all really tired of having to strap on a mask every time we go out in public. I know I was. It's just going to be really nice to be able to exist again. I'm not going to go down the path of, again, like to me, like whatever makes you comfortable. I've seen some interviews with people say like, hey, I'm not going to stop wearing it. If your health is compromised, whatever, maybe the good that will come of it in that regard is that people, when they are sick, will politely wear a mask, and people that are compromised know that masking will help them and it won't be this sort of very strange thing that it might have been in the past. It's one of the new norms. And so hopefully now that we're kind of on the other side of it, it'll just become that an option for people that does keep them safe. But it was really starting to feel like to me anyway, a social wedge, and just glad to have our faces back. I love people and I love seeing people's faces and expressions, and it's just such a compromised reality to live behind masks. So I'm just personally thrilled that we're past that and we can, but hey, strapping one on to get on a plane was no issue for me because just being able to get on a plane and get where I wanted to go. I was in, Nashville and London all in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Again, just had big adventures in both those places. And so I want to tell you a couple of things that really inspired me. Number one on the list is Jack White and what he's built with his Third Man label, his Third Man business. If you don't know, obviously you know who Jack White is. He's, I think, one of the great living, active musical artists, of the past 2 generations now. His music can be challenging, so it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if you look at musicians who have had lasting careers all the way back from the White Stripes to his solo work and his multiple bands, he just continues to me to show up and kind of blow minds. Every time I see him on an award show or a festival stage or something, he just, the guy brings it. You probably saw, right after Eddie Van Halen died and Saturday Night Live needed an emergency fill-in guest because that country artist was out partying without a mask, right? When it was, everybody needed to be wearing a mask. And they called Jack White in at the last minute, and he came on, a few days after Eddie died and, didn't play Eruption but it was so clear that it was part of Eddie's legacy to have a guy like Jack White play like he does and bring that kind of energy and that innovative creativity to the instrument and to his music. It just felt like the most appropriate tribute. The only subtle thing Jack White did was during his second song, he played a Wolfgang guitar. That was, I don't know if Eddie made it specifically for him, but it was, in his colors and all that stuff. So it's just a subtle nod to Eddie without going overboard. And that's what I dig about Jack White. He's just doing his thing. I think this is something we can all observe as freelancers, because let's face it, if you are building a brand around your skill, your freelancing, then you have to and get to make a lot of decisions about how you put out not only your content, but how you connect with your audiences. There's a lot of people doing a lot of cool stuff. So what Jack White has done is, he just brings, I wouldn't call it subtle. It's just, it's unapologetic amount of style and vision to everything he creates. And he's not asking anybody to love it necessarily. It's basically for the people who can appreciate it, right? Without having to outwardly say, this is a great example of show, don't tell. He's never saying, hey, this is not for you if you don't really love music and want to go deep, and if you don't appreciate independent artists. And he's not saying any of that. He's just doing it. He's recording independent artists. He's not locking them into restrictive contracts. He's pressing vinyl records at a time where that's still expensive and difficult to do. There's a great interview with Jack and I don't know the guy's last name, Zane something. Just Google. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but Google Jack White and Zane, and it'll come right up. And it's like an hour-long interview. It's fantastic, very well produced. It's from Apple Music, and this guy goes back to Detroit with Jack, and they tour his recording studio and his pressing business there and show you how everything works. You walk around the neighborhood and how it's, starting to get revitalized, and the kind of people that work for this company and the kind of artists it supports. And it's just amazingly cool. And so I haven't been to the Detroit location, but I got to go to Third Man Records in both Nashville and London in the span of 3 weeks from each other. It just turned out that I was traveling to both those places and made it a point to go to both of them. Very consistent, very similar. The color schemes, the design, every just inch of the place, incredibly thought out. And here's two great examples of taking something that you are motivated by or interested in and making it accessible. I don't know if you know, but I have this thing called the freelancing profit pie. And it's where we measure how we spend our time, energy, and money in three different ways. Beyond revenue, two of the other categories are development and motive. So I call it rev, dev, and motiv. When you look at Jack White's world and what he's built, you can see that he takes what things that motivate him and he develops them into something that can produce revenue, right? And if we stop and think about it, man, that is really the ultimate freedom in business, to be able to do that. Like, take something that excites you and use what you know about business to develop it into something that can earn you money. That's, to me, the greatest entrepreneurial outcome we can have. And we are, as a side note, in an incredible industry to be able to do that with marketing and copywriting. So that's what Jack has done. He just brings his flair. And so there's two things I got to experience that really encapsulate this idea of motive into development into revenue. One is in the Nashville store. He has a 1946 automatic recording booth, right? So it looks like a phone booth that's, soundproofed. And again, I'll include some pictures in the show notes here. So you go in and you pay $20, and back in the day in 1946, originally it was like 35 cents. You would go into this thing and you'd have like 3 minutes to sing a song or record a message to friends and family back home. Soldiers would use this to send recordings of their voice to family, and you could mail your recording right from the machine. And so you record for 3 minutes. It's got this old analog countdown timer, and then it sits there and it presses your record right there, and you can see the whole thing working, and then it just spits out your record and you're done. And so you can record a song or whatever you want in the span of about 6 minutes. It's incredible. So that was it. And again, there's only two of these, I think, in the world, and Jack owns them, is refurbished both of them. One's in Nashville, one's in Detroit, and he refurbished it, top to bottom. It's working exactly like it did in 1946. And just imagine the effort that must have took. But imagine like all the cool people he met along the way to get that done, and how you'd have to search for people who have a similar interest in things, and where you might have to get apart one little part that's, keeping the thing from working. And I just, having an adventure like that to create something that people can use and enjoy and experience, and literally step into a time machine, right? And have this experience. It was phenomenal. So that was one. And then in London, I think this one he must have built himself, but it looked completely retro, and it's called a Literarium. And what it is just really cool looking vending machine. And you buy a couple of tokens from the desk, and you put them in, and it makes these fun noises, and it spits out a random book from like an independent author. And the books were everything from, we did it 4 times. We were having so much fun with it. And the books were anything from short stories to photography, to one was biographies of legendary musicians and like weird experiences they had in their childhood, like Jim Morrison and John Lennon and Freddie Mercury and people like that. I think one was poetry. And again, just all produced by Third Man Printing, but just a way to expose these artists and say, again, think of that idea. It's like, put money into this machine for so many reasons, for the experience of it, for the fun of it, and to get surprised by what comes out the other side, and to support independent artists. All those things are happening as you sit there with a smile on your face and pop in a couple tokens to this machine. And now you have this book. Of course, you're going to pay close attention to it because it's a surprise, and you start to get curious about who is this artist and what was their intention for this book. And, it's just, I don't know, it's so different than what we do in direct response in a lot of ways, which is trying very hard to convince people to take an action. This was just simply inviting people to take an action because they were curious, and their curiosity would reward them with something cool, right? Something to think about as we try to compete for attention in this big old crazy world of marketing and say, how can I do things different? How can I buck the norm? Hey, it's Kev here. And look, I get it. I know there's so many communities. I'm doing air quotes, communities for entrepreneurs out there, all filled with their own version of overnight experts chirping at you from behind the screen. You got your Facebook groups, your clubhouse rooms, just experts galore. How often do you feel like you're being pinballed around from thing to thing and picking up a little bit, a little piece there? How much of that is actually making it into your brain, and your fingers and your business and affecting your money? How many of these people are actually out there in the field getting their hands dirty and testing to find out what actually works and what flops? Well, in the Copy Chief community, a real community, you get shoulder to shoulder with the most active, successful marketers working in the trenches today, all while learning from industry legends who rarely teach anywhere else, if ever. Copy Chief is an amazing community, super newbie friendly. Also, you'll find elite level marketers and copywriters in there. They're all working to become the best at their craft, get paid top dollar for their skills, stay ahead of the competition by keeping their finger on the pulse of what's working now. That's the X factor when you're backed up by a community and you can get any question you have answered by people who actually do this stuff and can tell you from real world experience what to do for your project, for your offer, for your funnel, for your clients. Man, you're unstoppable when you've got that kind of confidence. So go check us out at copychief.com/join. If you've never been a member, you're going to see what you've been missing and you're going to say, where has this been all my life? And if you've been a member in the past, I would invite you to come and check out all the new stuff. We've completely updated all the tech. So we're on brand new platforms. Everything is slick and smooth and easy to access. And it's never been better. Copychief.com/join. I'll look for you inside. So those were cool examples. One other thing I want to share from the travels was my experience with Virgin, the Virgin brand, as you know, created by Richard Branson. I know he's no longer directly involved with the airline, but I stayed at a Virgin hotel and I flew Virgin Atlantic to London. I stayed in the hotel in Nashville. Here's the interesting thing, the takeaway. First of all, again, a huge fan of the Virgin brand, similar to the stuff I'm saying about Jack White stuff, just elegant, beautiful, subtle details. The color scheme, the red and the white in the Virgin Hotel, just it permeates through the entire building. In your room, for instance, the shower was white subway tile with red fixtures. Just subtle, really cool. Just feel cool being in the room. The mini bar was a retro looking refrigerator, stocked with stuff that was red and really well done. On their phone in the Virgin Hotel, they have a big button that just says yes, right? Because that is their philosophy. Like whatever you're asking, our answer is going to be yes. And we are here to try to do everything we possibly can to make your stay phenomenal. And I would say that permeated through my entire stay there, and also permeates through the experience with the airline, except for two interesting experience I had after fulfillment that were lacking and actually completely off brand. This is a lesson really in customer support. So at the hotel, again, having this phenomenal experience, and then completely my fault, I brought 3 different hats to Nashville and I left them in the hotel just because I had them in a place where I didn't think to look, and I left them there. And so I realized this on my way to the airport. I called the hotel thinking, oh, great. Well, hopefully I'll get the same sort of yes button response to me stupidly leaving my hats in the room. And they'll say, yep, we have them. And we'll arrange to send them to you or whatever. Instead, somebody says, okay, just go to a website called ileftmystuff.com. They'll take care of it for you. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds okay. Well, maybe this is a cool, elegant thing that they created that'll be super helpful. Sadly, that was not the case. You go to the site and you fill out all the information about where you stayed. I was encouraged by the fact that, okay, there's Virgin Hotel Nashville listed. So clearly they're associated. Here's the day I was there. Here's the room number I was in. And then you fill that out and you hit like submit and nothing happens. It literally like not even a screen comes up that says, okay, we got it. Here's a summary of what you told us. And here's what you can expect next. It's just nothing. I literally filled it out twice because I thought, there was a glitch, like it didn't go through or something. Same experience twice. Nothing happens. And then there's not even an email follow up to say, hey, we got your submission and we're actively looking for it or anything like that. No idea how the system actually works or anything. No way to contact them or anybody. So that was it. Of course, I never heard a word back from ileftmystuff.com and the hats were never found, which again, my fault, whatever. Sometimes you got to give things up to the road so it doesn't take you completely, as my friend Lou used to always tell me when I would lose something on the road. And I love that philosophy, but it was just so off brand and off experience to everything else they've worked so hard to create at the Virgin Hotel that it was really disappointing. So that was weird. And then, so here I am, coincidentally, 2 weeks later, flying Virgin Air. This time, not our fault, but, not their fault either. The fault of weather. Our flight was delayed leaving Tampa. We got in late to Atlanta. We had to run to the plane in Atlanta to make the flight to London. We barely made it. And of course, our luggage did not make it, which we knew would be the case. Because you can actually track your luggage really well through the Delta app, right? I could literally see that my bag was on the other plane and it was showing you, here's where you are, here's where your bag is. And I'm like, yep, that's not making it. So that was kind of cool. Like I knew what was up. Good. Again, whatever, you lose luggage, the knowing that helps you deal with it. Here's what will happen next. So we get to London and sure enough, of course, our bags aren't there. So we just go and we report to the guy there who's, one guy covering missing luggage for like 4 different airlines. He gives me a thing to fill out and with my contact number. And so the day goes by, nothing happens. And again, if you've ever lost luggage, especially on an international flight, the real drag of it is sort of not knowing when you'll get luggage. Like for instance, we left Florida where it was, probably close to 80 degrees and arrived in London where it was closer to 45, 50 degrees. And all of our coats, all of our warm clothes were in the bags. Normally I would carry on, but because we had the whole family with us, it really wasn't an option. So what do? Do you buy clothes? Is it going to be 5 hours? Is it going to be 48 hours? What are we talking about here? And there was just zero communication. I tried calling the baggage handler. We called Delta, we called Virgin, nobody could help us. There was simply no one to communicate with about where the bags were or what would happen next. And then get this, the only thing we could do was kind of track the bag still through the Delta app and see, and we did get a message that they had arrived in Heathrow, basically 24 hours later. So like, okay, great. But again, are they on their way now? Should I go get them? Like, what happens here? Try all day. It's, completely disruptive. We're out trying to see sights and do things, but you're sort of also constantly checking to see if there's any word. And you're just sort of in this, luggage limbo as you try to exist in a place as amazing as London, right? I know, first world problems, but still annoying. The point is that communication would have made this a completely different experience. So here's what happens. We finally sort of like throw in the towel and go like, whatever, we'll just stop worrying about the luggage. And we're going to dinner. This is the second day we're there. We walk out of our Airbnb and there's a man standing on the sidewalk. And he goes, is this 143 Fleet Street? And we go, yeah. We're thinking he's in one of the other units as a guest himself. And he goes, I'm trying to return lost luggage. We just like yell. We're like, yes, that's us. And he's like, 4 bags? We're like, yes, 4 bags. Sure. So like by a small miracle, we actually run into the dude who has our luggage, but we had no way to know he was on our way, right? No knowledge that this guy existed, that he had our bags, that he was trying to find us. They had given him no way to contact us. So I don't know, man. It was just, a really stupid process. And again, after the flight, right? So it's just that the lesson here is that Virgin seems to have a huge hole in their game of an otherwise unbelievably good experience they create for you. And that is what happens when something goes wrong. They're so concentrated on making things go right in the most predictable ways. We know that people like this, so we create it like this. And we want to create all these sort of little dream come true scenarios for things we know will happen. But when things that don't normally happen, but also happen with some predictability, people leave stuff in hotel rooms all the time. People lose their bags all the time, but they're completely inept at making anything like a Virgin experience in those circumstances, right? So just interesting that I was able to witness both the beauty and elegance and the total lack of capability and execution all with one brand over a 2-week span. It was really wild. So just something to think about that, my friend Brian Kurt says this all the time, that customer support is marketing. And that's so true. You have to do everything you can to make sure that people are supported when something doesn't go as planned in your business. And this is whether you're just a one-person show as a freelancer. Are you, for instance, you can use a program like 17 Hats and set up like auto responders, to go out during the project. So your client isn't wondering, gee, where are we in this process of this person writing my copy? Is it happening? Are we good? Do they need anything from me? Should I be nervous? Have they been hit by a bus? I haven't heard anything in 2 weeks. Just a little nod to say, hey, everything's as should be. I am here working away, and I will, you can expect the first draft on this deadline, and right, just closes the loop in their head. One of my mentors, James Schramko, had a great saying. He said, if the customer has to ask how it's going, then you've dropped the ball. If they didn't know how it's going because you weren't proactively keeping them informed, that's your fault. You can't get annoyed at the client for wondering, how's it working out with the 10 grand I sent you? How's that going, So anyway, good lessons, something to think about as you're hearing me talk about this. Hopefully you're sort of reviewing your process. Have you ever had a client reach out to you and say, how's it going? And obviously there's, sometimes just annoying people who are just, nervously putting their fears onto you needlessly. But for the most part, if I look back and say, how many of the times that clients had to reach out to me and say, just checking in, how's it going? It was on me. Could have helped that by being a better communicator. Yeah, so there's my update. And again, it's just so great to be back traveling, to be seeing the world, to be meeting people. I just can't say enough about one-on-one, face-to-face, in the room, live, 3D, in real life encounters with people who are doing something similar to what you're doing, who are either a step behind or a step ahead of you on this journey, and how much you can learn from them, how these people will become your friends and allies for years and years and years to come. It's completely impossible to calculate the amount of work I've received and also helped facilitate between people that I've met and people that have sent me leads and referrals and people I've partnered on projects with that have been very lucrative. I would say just about every time that's ever happened, it's rooted in a real life encounter, not just faces on a screen. So get yourself back out there. If you're comfortable doing that, hopefully you're as excited as I am about just getting back out and interacting with the world again. To me, as a writer, that's where all the inspiration comes from. Everything I've shared with you would not have happened if I'd been sitting here at the house this whole time. And all this inspiration and things I got to see and feel and touch and experience, good and bad, it all lends to who we are and how we operate, right? And then it gets filtered through our own unique DNA in a way that it only could for us. And that's what gives us the advantage. So keep your eye out on what we're doing. Hopefully you're on our list, of course, over at copychief.com. Just go there and sign up for a free book or get on the list and look for future events. We definitely are doing an event, a live in-person event in September in Knoxville, Tennessee, where my integrator, Rachel Mazza, now lives and has been investing in properties there. It's a really cool town. I used to play Knoxville back when I was doing stand-up. I haven't been there in years. And it'll just be, again, one of those cool, intimate experiences. We'll probably have about 50 people out. We'll have some special guests, but mostly it'll be a big, fun 2.5 day experience where everybody's just getting to meet other cool people, make connections, create alliances and partnerships, and having a whole lot of fun. So mark your calendars. I think it starts on the 14th, September, like 14th through 16th. And would love to see you there and meet you and get to know you. So that's it. And like I said, as promised, I will now add in the audio from my session in London back on April 10th. It was 10 days ago. Hard to believe it was 10 days already. I think you'll really dig it. And it'll give you an idea of what those kind of intimate meetings are like and how valuable they are. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you. If you're not a member of Copy Chief, I'd love to see you in there. If you have any questions or want to know more about all the ways to be in the Copy Chief world, you can always email community@copychief.com and talk to Lolita. She is our community manager and knows all the different ways you can engage. All right, I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon. See you. Okay, so proof is one of those elements that obviously you could do anything with it. You could lead with it. You could lead 5 pages with it. You could choose one story like we were just talking about and make that your headline and your hook. You can find big ideas through story and proof. And so there's probably the most choice around proof and how you use it. But I always find that weaving it in story form throughout the copy is really effective.
Paris Lampropolis does that.
Does that really brilliantly, yeah. And so, if you, this is why when you are able to, with good clients, get access to their customers and get on the phone with them. And by the way, when you do that, we're talking about the legalities or whatever, start the call and say, a little chit chat, and you say, okay, I'm going to start recording now. Is that okay? You get permission to record. And then start the recording and say, I just get the formality out of the way. I just need you to say and spell your name. A reporter would do that to make sure they get it right? So I need you to say and spell your name and just repeat that I have permission to record this conversation and use it in our marketing and get them on the video saying that so you're covered legally. And then you just, want to dig their story out of them.
I have to remember that because we have lawyers that do that.
Yeah.
I need to remember to do it for myself.
Well, it's good. Yeah, it protects you. And you know what it also does, I find, Drew, is that puts them in the right mindset for why they're there.
Yeah.
Because think about it. If they're never been interviewed about anything before, they're kind of thinking they have to perform for you.
Yeah.
And you want to get them out of that to where they're just having a conversation because that's where the good shit's going to come from.
Yeah.
And so 2 of my favorite things about interviewing customers. And, there is a truth to you want to also talk to people who haven't solved the problem yet, who are still in the pain. But when you can talk to a happy customer, you can bring them back to the time when they had the pain. And so I'd ask them the standard stuff, which is basically 60-second sales. So like, who are you? What were you struggling with? What did you try that didn't work? And how's life different now that you've solved the problem? And why is my client so amazing and all that? But then I would say, I would always ask for two things. One is the rock bottom moment. This is where you get great emotion. And this is, you need to be able to talking to them for a while and establish trust. And by the way, here's a great tip for interviewing to think about. A reporter friend told me this. He used to be a local TV news reporter, and he would be the guy when somebody suffered a tragedy, like they lost a child or just the most unthinkable shit. He would be the guy who had to knock on their door and try to put a camera in their face. And I said, what the fuck do you say to them? How could you? He said, I remind them that as horrible as it is that they're going through this, there are other people who don't have a voice who might be going through something similar. And if they can see how you're experiencing it, that might really help somebody. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, man, that's still heavy as shit. But I could see where that would be effective. And so I took that, and I would always say, first of all, when I was inviting someone to get on this call with me, I would say that in my email invite. I'd say, it may seem like everyday news to you now, but imagine that there's a lot of people who are sitting right where you were before you solved this problem, feeling probably like you did, like there is no help, or they've tried everything. And man, for them to hear your story is gonna really, you could very literally change some lives by having this conversation. And they feel really empowered. And so I would remind them a little more casually of that on the call. And then so when you set it up that way and you ask them for the rock bottom moment, they go deep, they're willing to get vulnerable. And the second thing I would ask them towards the end, and I always make it feel like a little like an afterthought, because otherwise it feels like a little like a setup. I'd say, okay, I think that's it. Well, it was really great talking. Oh, one more thing. I'm just curious. Is there like a moment recently that you can remember where it struck you that you're doing something that you wouldn't have been able to do before you solved the problem? And they always go, huh? And they think for a minute. And sometimes it's a little mundane and they can't come up with anything, but every once in a while, they hit you with something and you're like, oh, shit. That's a headline. That's at least a bullet. It's, so like, weight loss is the easiest one, bless you, to get this emotion. The best rock bottom one I ever got was a guy who was telling me about taking his daughter to a water slide. And like he knew he probably needed to lose some weight, but he was like putting it off. And they get up there and it takes him 45 minutes to get to the top of the slide. And his daughter's all excited. And he gets up there and he sees a sign that says, you have to weigh, can't weigh more than this to go down the slide. Ouch. And there's a scale. And he's like, oh, fuck. And he's like, well, there's like a couple of stoners up here. Like maybe they don't probably care. And he gets up there and the guy looks at him and he's like, motions to the scale. And he gets on it. And the guy's like, sorry, man. So he now had to push his way down this small series of steps past everybody he just waited in line with. And his daughter looked at him and she's like, it's okay, Dad.
He's dying. Fuck. That's how great story leads begin. Yeah,
right? Okay, you hear that and you're like, because, plus also what's important to you is you feel the emotion of that. And now you start to go, and then it becomes a cliche thing, but like, I love how David Garfinkel starts his podcast. He says, copy is power, persuasion is powerful, and how you use it matters. And he's basically a legal disclaimer, but he's also saying, don't be an asshole with this, And it just reminds you that there are people who desperately want to be helped, and that's why they're willing to read your shit. And what you do with their attention is, and when you have that criteria and you only work with clients who also have that criteria, or at least it'll be very uncomfortable to work with clients who don't have a similar criteria. If they are just going through the motions, if they're only looking at the data and they don't see their market as humans, right? There's a reason that's off-putting to you. And you shouldn't compromise on that. It makes it harder to get going sometimes, and every once in a while, you need a couple grand. and you write a thing. Not that compromises your integrity, but, but the longer we're around, the more we get to raise the standard and make sure nobody gets in that shouldn't, So that's proof. That's a lot about proof. But like I said, it's probably the hardiest one there, especially in the second group here of 6. Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. Copychief.com/CCR.